On a warm September day in 1964, in the unlikely setting of Beirut, Lebanon, a baby boy was born who would one day become one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. The child's mother, Patricia, an English costume designer with an adventurous spirit, had met his father, Samuel, a Hawaiian-born geologist of Chinese-Hawaiian descent, while traveling. They named their son Keanu, a Hawaiian name meaning cool breeze over the mountains. Little did they know how perfectly this name would come to reflect the calm, thoughtful presence he would bring to an industry known for its storms. The family's time together was brief. When Keanu was just 3 years old, Samuel walked out of their lives, leaving Patricia to raise their son and later, their daughter Kim, alone. This early abandonment left a mark on young Keanu that would echo throughout his life. A quiet void that perhaps explains the gentle sadness that often lingers behind his eyes, even when he smiles. With Samuel gone, Patricia packed up her children and her dreams, beginning a journey that would take them across continents. They moved first to Australia, then to New York, before finally settling in Toronto, Canada. Each new city meant new schools, new faces, and the challenge of building a life from scratch. For a sensitive child like Keanu, this constant uprooting was both difficult and formative, teaching him early that life rarely stands still and that adaptability is as necessary as breathing. In Toronto, Patricia's talent as a costume designer flourished. She created wardrobes for rock stars and artists, bringing a touch of theatrical magic to their home life. The apartment was often filled with creative types, musicians, designers, writers, people who lived outside conventional boundaries and who showed Keanu that there were many different ways to move through the world. From his mother, he learned not just resilience, but also the value of creative expression and the importance of following one's passion, regardless of the obstacles. But school presented a different kind of challenge. Keanu struggled with dyslexia in an era when learning disabilities were poorly understood and often dismissed as laziness or lack of intelligence. Words jumbled on the page before him, making reading a frustrating battle rather than a joy. He attended 4 different high schools, including a Catholic school where he was eventually expelled, not for rebellion but for what teachers saw as a lack of focus and application. "I wasn't the best student," Keanu would later admit with characteristic understatement. "I had trouble concentrating." What his teachers failed to recognize was that his mind wasn't absent. It was simply processing the world differently, finding patterns and connections that others might miss, developing the unique perspective that would later bring such depth to his performances. Despite these academic struggles, there were 2 places where young Keanu found his focus: the hockey rink and the stage. On the ice, playing goalie for his school team, he earned the nickname The Wall for his intensity and quick reflexes. Hockey gave him both an outlet for his energy and a taste of what it meant to be part of a team, to be relied upon and to rely on others, experiences that were precious to a boy who had learned early that people could disappear from your life without warning. But it was acting that truly captured his imagination. At 16, almost by chance, he auditioned for a community theater production and discovered something unexpected. When he stepped into someone else's shoes, the words that had always betrayed him on paper suddenly made sense when spoken aloud. On stage, his dyslexia didn't matter. What mattered was his remarkable ability to feel and convey emotion, to transform himself into someone else, while somehow remaining unmistakably himself. Theater became his education. He devoured plays by Shakespeare, Chekhov, and Tennessee Williams, finding in these works a language for the complex emotions he'd carried since childhood. He spent hours watching old movies, studying the performances of actors like Peter O'Toole, whose work in Lawrence of Arabia showed him that acting could be both powerful and subtle, that the quietest moments could speak the loudest. These early years were not without their struggles. Money was often tight. Patricia's work, while creative and fulfilling, didn't always pay the bills. Sometimes Keanu worked odd jobs to help support the family, stocking shelves, sharpening ice skates, making pasta. These experiences grounded him in a reality that many who later find fame never know, giving him an appreciation for hard work and a respect for those who do it every day without recognition or applause. By the time he was 20, Keanu had made a decision. Despite having no connections in the industry, despite the long odds against success, he would pursue acting as a career. With just a few dollars in his pocket and his hockey bag filled with clothes, He drove an old car from Toronto to Los Angeles, the city where dreams either come true or dissolve under the harsh California sun. Those first years in Hollywood were lean ones. He lived in cheap apartments, sometimes sharing space with other struggling actors. He took whatever work he could find, a commercial for Coca-Cola, a small part in a forgettable TV show, roles in low-budget films that came and went without notice. But unlike many others who arrive in Hollywood with stars in their eyes, Keanu brought with him a work ethic shaped by early hardship and a perspective that valued the work itself over the rewards it might bring. His breakthrough came not with a bang, but with a slow, steady building of momentum. A small but memorable role in the dark teenage drama River's Edge caught the attention of casting directors. This led to a larger part in Dangerous Liaisons, where he worked alongside established stars like Glenn Close and John Malkovich, absorbing their techniques and professionalism like a sponge. And then came Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the comedy that would make him famous but also threatened to typecast him. As Ted, the good-hearted but dim-witted teenager on a time-traveling adventure, Keanu created a character so endearing and so memorable that even decades later, fans would approach him on the street with the famous greeting, "Whoa!" Success brought new opportunities but also new challenges. Suddenly, the boy who had grown up moving from place to place, never quite belonging anywhere, was recognized everywhere he went. The private, thoughtful young man who had found in acting a way to express the complex emotions he rarely shared in real life, now found his every expression, every word scrutinized by strangers. It was a disorienting experience, one that might have changed a less grounded individual. But those early years, the absent father, the moving from place to place, the struggles with dyslexia, the lessons learned from his creative, resilient mother had built in Keanu a core of authenticity that fame couldn't touch. "I'm Mickey Mouse," he once said, trying to explain his sudden fame. "They don't know who's inside the suit." It was a telling comment from a young man still coming to terms with a level of attention that was both flattering and frightening, trying to separate who he was from who the world now thought him to be. As the 1990s began, Keanu stood at a crossroads. He had achieved a level of success that most actors only dream of, but the road ahead was uncertain. Would he lean into the likable persona that Bill and Ted had established, or would he push himself toward more challenging roles, risking failure for the chance to grow as an artist? The answer would come in the choices he made next, choices that would reveal the depth and range of his talent, but also lead him toward some of the darkest moments of his life. For the young man from nowhere and everywhere whose name meant cool breeze over the mountains, the journey was just beginning. And like the shadows that sometimes crossed his face even in moments of joy, there were storms on the horizon that not even his gentle, philosophical nature could fully prepare him to weather. The Hollywood that greeted Keanu in the mid-1980s was a place of extremes. Behind the glamorous facade of red carpets and million-dollar smiles lurked an industry known for chewing up young talent and spitting them out broken. It was a town where success was measured in box office numbers and magazine covers, where substance often took a backseat to style, and where staying true to oneself was perhaps the hardest role to play. Keanu's first years in this glittering, treacherous landscape were marked by small victories and quiet persistence. He lived in modest apartments, sometimes a small hotel on the Sunset Strip, where other struggling actors and musicians crossed paths. Unlike many newcomers with stars in their eyes, he didn't spend his nights at flashy clubs trying to be seen. Instead, he rode his motorcycle through the canyons, read books in coffee shops, and studied films at revival houses, soaking up the craft he was determined to master. His early roles came in fits and starts. A TV movie here, a small part in a forgettable film there, a Coca-Cola commercial that paid the rent for a few months. What set him apart wasn't just his striking looks. Though with his tall frame, angular features, and soulful eyes, he certainly had a camera-ready presence. It was something less tangible, a quality of being both present and slightly elsewhere, as if part of him was always observing from a distance. River's Edge in 1986 marked his first significant role, a dark film about teenagers reacting to a murder in their midst. Keanu's performance as a troubled teen showed flashes of the depth he would later bring to more complex roles. Critics began to take notice of the young actor with the unusual name. It was around this time that Keanu formed a friendship that would become one of the most significant of his life. River Phoenix was, in many ways, Keanu's opposite. Raised in a large bohemian family, homeschooled, a vegetarian from childhood, and already marked as one of the most promising talents of his generation. Yet the two young actors connected deeply, recognizing in each other a similar sensitivity and thoughtfulness rare in Hollywood's competitive atmosphere. When they worked together on I Love You to Death and later, on My Own Private Idaho, their on-screen chemistry was electric. Fueled by genuine off-screen respect and affection, they spent hours discussing philosophy, music, and the strange experience of growing up in public view. River became one of the few people with whom Keanu could fully let his guard down, sharing doubts and dreams he rarely voiced to others. River was a really special person, a one-of-a-kind soul, Keanu would later say, his voice growing soft with memory. He was someone who had so much to give and did give so much. Meanwhile, Keanu's career was gaining momentum, though not always in the direction he might have chosen. The role that catapulted him to mainstream fame came in the form of Ted Logan, the good-natured but dim-witted teenager in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The film, released in 1989, became a surprise hit, its catchphrases entering the popular lexicon and Keanu's face suddenly appearing on movie posters and teen magazines. Almost overnight, he went from being a working actor to a reluctant teen idol. Young fans waited outside his apartment, directors wanted to cast him as variations of Ted, and journalists seemed more interested in his hair and hobbies than his craft. For someone as private and serious about acting as Keanu, this new attention was both flattering and deeply uncomfortable. The success of Bill and Ted presented Keanu with a dilemma that would follow him throughout his career. The pull between commercial success and artistic credibility. He could have easily capitalized on his newfound fame by accepting similar roles in teen comedies, securing his status as a Hollywood heartthrob. Instead, he made a more difficult choice, seeking out diverse, challenging parts that would stretch him as an actor. He appeared in period pieces like Dangerous, Liaison, indie dramas like My Own Private Idaho, and action films like Point Break. Each role revealed new facets of his talent, his ability to disappear into characters while maintaining that essential Keanu-ness that audiences responded to. Critics were divided. Some dismissed him as wooden or limited, focusing on his sometimes stilted delivery. Others recognized the subtle power of his performances, the way he could convey complex emotions with the smallest shifts in expression. Through it all, Keanu maintained a modest lifestyle at odds with his growing bank account. He continued to ride the subway, lived in ordinary apartments rather than Hollywood mansions, and often ate at diners where he could chat with regular people away from the industry bubble. When asked about his apparent lack of interest in the trappings of fame, he would shrug and say simply, "I don't need much." This simplicity extended to his approach to the craft itself. While some of his contemporaries talked at length about their method and process, Keanu prepared for roles quietly and without fanfare. For Point Break, he spent months learning to surf. For Speed, he trained with SWAT teams. For Much Ado About Nothing, he immersed himself in Shakespeare's language. He did the work without complaint or self-promotion, earning the respect of crews and co-stars for his professionalism and lack of ego. By the mid-1990s, Keanu had achieved what few actors ever do, a career that balanced commercial viability with artistic respect. Films like Speed proved he could carry a big-budget action movie, while projects like Little Buddha showed his willingness to take risks and work with visionary directors. He was, by Hollywood standards, a success story, yet those who knew him well noted that he never seemed entirely comfortable with his status. At press junkets, he answered questions thoughtfully but briefly, clearly preferring to let the work speak for itself. At premieres, he often appeared slightly bewildered by the fuss, as if unsure why his presence caused such excitement. And in interviews, he repeatedly steered conversations away from his personal life and toward the projects he was passionate about. This reluctance to play the celebrity game sometimes earned him mockery. Late-night comedians imitated his "whoa" catchphrase and surfer-like speaking style. Tabloids speculated wildly about his romantic life and sexuality. Internet rumors claimed he was secretly giving away millions or living in subway stations. The real Keanu remained elusive, hidden behind the public persona that others had created for him. Perhaps this disconnect between public perception and private reality explained the faint sadness that often seemed to hover around him even in moments of triumph. Or perhaps it was something deeper. The old wounds of abandonment and displacement. The struggle to find meaning in an industry built on illusion. Or simply the natural melancholy of a thoughtful person in a world that often rewards superficiality. Whatever its source, this quality of gentle sorrow became part of his appeal. In an era of polished, media-trained celebrities, Keanu's awkwardness in interviews, his sometimes fumbling attempts to express complex thoughts, and the shadows that occasionally crossed his face felt refreshingly authentic. Here was a movie star who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with stardom, who appeared to be wrestling with the same big questions about life and purpose that troubled ordinary people. As the decade wore on, Keanu continued to evolve as an actor, taking on increasingly diverse roles. He played an earnest lawyer in The Devil's Advocate, a computer hacker in Johnny Mnemonic, and a violent criminal in The Watcher. Not all of these choices paid off critically or commercially, but each reflected his commitment to growth and his willingness to risk failure in pursuit of something meaningful. Then, in 1999, came the role that would define the next phase of his career and cement his status as a cultural icon. Neo, the reluctant messiah of The Matrix. The film's blend of groundbreaking visual effects, philosophical themes, and Hong Kong-inspired action sequences perfectly complemented Keanu's unique presence. His ability to combine physical prowess with an air of spiritual questioning made him ideal for the character of a man awakening to the truth about reality itself. The Matrix was more than just another hit movie. It was a phenomenon that changed filmmaking and popular culture. Suddenly, Keanu wasn't just famous, he was legendary. But even as he reached this new height of success, storm clouds were gathering on his horizon. The very qualities that made him perfect for Neo, his aura of having experienced both joy and profound sorrow, his sense of being in the world but not entirely of it, would soon be tested by losses so devastating that they might have broken a less resilient spirit. Success in Hollywood often comes with a price. For some, it's the loss of privacy. For others, it's the pressure to maintain an image or the constant fear of becoming irrelevant. For Keanu, the cost would be measured in a series of personal tragedies, so profound that they might have broken a less resilient spirit. The first blow came on October 31, 1993. Keanu was filming Speed in Los Angeles when he received the call that would change his life. River Phoenix, his dear friend and former co-star, had collapsed outside the Viper Room, a popular nightclub on the Sunset Strip. By the time Keanu learned what had happened, River was already gone, dead from a drug overdose at just 23 years old. The loss hit Keanu with the force of a physical blow. River wasn't just a colleague. He was one of the few people in Hollywood who truly understood Keanu, who shared his sensitive nature and thoughtful approach to acting. They had planned to work together again, to grow old in the industry together. Now, suddenly, River was gone, his brilliant promise extinguished far too soon. Friends noticed a change in Keanu after River's death. The natural reserve that had always been part of his character deepened. He withdrew further into himself, spending more time alone with his books and motorcycles. When asked about River in interviews, he would respond briefly, his eyes reflecting a pain too private to share with strangers. "I miss him greatly," was all he would say. The simplicity of the statement conveying more genuine emotion than any elaborate eulogy could have. Work became both refuge and distraction. On the set of Speed, Keanu threw himself into the physically demanding role of Jack Traven, with an intensity that impressed even veteran stunt coordinators. The film's success further elevated his status in Hollywood, establishing him as an action star capable of carrying a major summer blockbuster. But those close to him noted that his heart wasn't in the newfound fame. He seemed to view it as something separate from himself, a curious twist of fate rather than a personal achievement. Then, just as the wounds of River's death were beginning to heal, life dealt Keanu another cruel blow. His younger sister Kim, the person who had been his constant through their nomadic childhood, was diagnosed with leukemia. The siblings had always been close, their bond strengthened by their shared experiences of displacement and their father's abandonment. Now, faced with her illness, Keanu did what he had always done when someone he loved needed him. He showed up, completely and without reservation. Despite being at the height of his career, he rearranged shooting schedules, turned down lucrative roles, and spent countless hours by Kim's bedside. He donated generously to leukemia research, though typically without publicity or fanfare, and when she needed someone to just sit with her through long hospital days, to remind her that she wasn't fighting alone, he was there, reading to her or simply holding her hand in silent solidarity. Kim would eventually enter remission, but the experience left its mark on both siblings. For Keanu, it was a stark reminder of life's fragility and the ultimate meaninglessness of fame in the face of serious illness. It reinforced his already strong tendency to value people over possessions, relationships over resume credits. By the late 1990s, Keanu seemed to have weathered the worst of the storm. His career was thriving with the groundbreaking success of The Matrix, a film that revolutionized action cinema and cemented his place as a cultural icon. And in his personal life, he had found love with Jennifer Syme, a production assistant he met at a party for his band Dogstar. Friends who saw them together noted a lightness in Keanu that had been missing since River's death. Jennifer shared his introspective nature and love of literature, often exchanging books and ideas. They moved in together and in 1999 announced that they were expecting a child, a daughter they planned to name Ava. The pregnancy progressed normally until the 8th month. When routine monitoring detected a problem, the baby's heart had stopped beating. On Christmas Eve, Jennifer delivered their stillborn daughter. What should have been a time of celebration became instead a period of unimaginable grief. The loss devastated the couple. They had prepared a nursery, chosen names, imagined a future that now would never be. The pain of such a loss constrained even the strongest relationships. And despite their deep connection, Keanu and Jennifer broke up several weeks after the tragedy. Though they remained close friends, Keanu retreated further into himself. He spent long hours riding his motorcycle on empty desert roads, the solitude and speed providing a temporary escape from grief. Or he would sit in empty diners late at night, reading poetry. Rilke and Basho were favorites, their words offering what comfort literature can provide to a wounded heart. During this dark period, he was filming The Matrix sequels, playing the messianic Neo who saves humanity. The irony wasn't lost on him, portraying a savior on screen while feeling powerless to protect those he loved in real life. But he showed up to set each day, professional as always, channeling his personal pain into performances of surprising depth. Then, in April 2001 came the blow that would have broken many. Jennifer, still struggling with grief over their daughter's death, died in a car accident after attending a party at the home of musician Marilyn Manson. She was just 28 years old. The news reached Keanu as he was preparing to begin filming The Matrix Reloaded. Production was temporarily halted as he grappled with this fresh loss, this new crater in his emotional landscape. Friends worried about him during this period, concerned by the accumulation of tragedies in his life. But Keanu, while deeply wounded, did not break. When asked years later how he coped with so much loss, he responded with characteristic thoughtfulness. Grief changes shape, but it never ends. People have a misconception that you can deal with it and say, "It's gone and I'm better." They're wrong. When the people you love are gone, you're alone. He paused, then added, "I guess what I'm trying to say is that I miss the people I loved, and they make me who I am." This period of devastating personal loss coincided with Keanu's greatest professional success. The Matrix trilogy made him wealthy beyond imagination and famous worldwide. The film's blend of action, philosophy, and groundbreaking special effects resonated with audiences around the globe. Phrases like red pill and blue pill entered the cultural lexicon, and Keanu's face appeared on everything from lunchboxes to university philosophy course materials. Yet those who worked with him during this time noted that his approach to fame remained unchanged. He still arrived on set without entourage or fanfare, still treated crew members with the same respect he showed directors, still seemed genuinely puzzled by the fuss his presence created. One famous story from the filming of the Matrix sequels revealed much about his character. Upon learning that the special effects and stunt teams, the unsung heroes whose work made the action sequences possible, were not included in the back-end profits, Keanu quietly signed away a significant portion of his earnings to include them. When asked about this decision, which reportedly cost him many millions, he shrugged it off, saying only, "Money is the last thing I think about. I could live on what I've already made for the next few centuries." This attitude toward wealth, viewing it as a tool rather than a goal, became more pronounced after his experiences of loss. He set up a private cancer foundation in honor of his sister, donated to children's hospitals and spinal cord research, and became known for his generosity to co-workers and strangers alike, though he rarely discussed these actions publicly. As the new millennium progressed, Keanu entered a period of professional retreat. After the completion of the Matrix trilogy, he appeared in fewer films, often choosing smaller projects over blockbusters. Some critics and fans wondered if he was semi-retired or simply being more selective. The truth was perhaps more complex. Having experienced the worst pain life can offer, the deaths of those closest to him, Keanu seemed to be re-evaluating his relationship with his career. Fame had not protected him from tragedy. Money had not shielded him from grief. Perhaps he was searching for something more meaningful than another box office success, something that would honor the memories of those he had lost. "We're all just passing through," he said in a rare moment of openness during an interview in 2005. "So you might as well try to do something good." For a man who had seen so much darkness, it was a statement of surprising hope, a glimpse of the resilience that would eventually lead him back to the light. But the road ahead would be long, and for now Keanu walked it largely alone, carrying his grief with the quiet dignity that had become his hallmark. In an industry built on carefully crafted images and strategic public relations, Keanu Reeves stands apart. His reputation isn't the result of a savvy publicity team or calculated photo opportunities. It has grown organically over decades, built on countless small moments of genuine kindness, witnessed by everyone from A-list celebrities to everyday people who happened to cross his path. The mid-2000s were a relatively quiet period in Keanu's career. After the conclusion of the Matrix trilogy, he stepped back from blockbuster films, appearing instead in smaller projects like Thumbsucker and A Scanner Darkly. Some critics wondered if his star was fading. What they failed to understand was that Keanu was never particularly interested in stardom to begin with. While other celebrities of his caliber traveled with entourages and lived in gated mansions, Keanu continued to live simply. He could often be spotted riding the subway in New York, sitting quietly with a book, occasionally offering his seat to other passengers. When recognized, he would chat politely with fans, giving them his full attention rather than hurrying away or hiding behind sunglasses. One famous story from this period involves a stranded motorist. Keanu was driving his Porsche along a rural highway when he spotted a woman whose car had broken down. Instead of passing by like most would, he pulled over, helped her call for a tow truck, and then drove her more than 50 miles to her destination. The woman only realized who her Good Samaritan was when she saw his picture in a magazine weeks later. Another tale comes from a movie set worker who was going through financial difficulties. When Keanu heard about the man's situation, he gifted him $20,000 to help cover his bills. No press release announced this gesture. The story only came to light years later when the grateful recipient shared it. These weren't isolated incidents, but part of a pattern of generosity that has defined Keanu's life away from the cameras. For the special effects and stunt crews on the Matrix sequels, he purchased Harley-Davidson motorcycles as thank you gifts. For the costume department on John Wick, he arranged personalized chocolates from an expensive Swiss chocolatier. For a children's hospital he has supported for years, he makes regular visits without publicity, sitting with young patients and reading stories. What makes these acts particularly noteworthy is Keanu's insistence on keeping them private. Unlike many celebrities who ensure their charitable efforts are well documented, he has never sought recognition for his kindness. When asked directly about these stories, he typically deflects with a shrug or changes the subject, clearly uncomfortable with praise for what he considers basic human decency. This modesty extends to his professional life as well. Film crews who have worked with him consistently describe him as exceptionally respectful, learning everyone's names regardless of their position, and bringing coffee for camera operators during early morning shoots. On one film, when production fell behind schedule, Keanu voluntarily took a pay cut so that the makeup artist and costume designer could be paid for the extra time. A colleague once explained, "He doesn't do these things for attention or to build his brand. That's what's so refreshing. In an industry where everyone is calculating how each action will be perceived, Keanu just does what he thinks is right. This authentic approach to life has roots in Keanu's personal philosophy, one shaped by Eastern thought, particularly Buddhism, though he has never claimed any specific religious affiliation. Those who have spent time with him note that he often speaks of the interconnectedness of all beings and the importance of practicing compassion. "We're all in this together," he once said in a rare reflective interview. "The whole thing, life, it's a wonderful journey and a difficult journey. How we treat each other matters." This perspective feels especially hard-won coming from someone who has experienced such profound loss. Rather than turning inward or becoming bitter, Keanu seems to have allowed his grief to open his heart wider, to deepen his empathy for others who are suffering. His approach to aging and mortality reflects this thoughtful stance. While many in Hollywood fight desperately against time with plastic surgery and age-inappropriate roles, Keanu has embraced the passing years with characteristic grace. When asked about turning 50, he replied simply, "I'm here, and as long as I'm here, I'll be better." This comfort with life's impermanence stands in stark contrast to the youth-obsessed culture of Hollywood. It also makes him something of an anomaly among his peers, a man who seems genuinely at peace with the natural order of things, including his own eventual death. "I know that the ones who love us will miss us," he once responded when asked what happens after death. The simplicity and emotional truth of the statement touching millions when the clip went viral online. His living arrangements reflect this lack of attachment to material excess. For many years, Keanu lived in a modest apartment and then in hotel rooms, owning few possessions beyond his beloved motorcycles and books. When he finally purchased a home in the Hollywood Hills, it was notable for its understatement, comfortable but far from ostentatious without the theaters, wine cellars, and infinity pools that are standard features of celebrity homes. A telling anecdote from this period involves a birthday celebration. The film crew Keanu was working with bought him a cake, knowing he often let his birthday pass without mention. When they presented it to him, he seemed genuinely moved, cutting slices for everyone before taking one for himself. Later, a crew member found him sitting alone, eating his cake with a plastic fork, happily chatting with a homeless man he'd invited to share the moment. Such stories might seem too good to be true, like urban legends built around a celebrity known for keeping his private life private. Yet they are consistently vouched for by those who have worked with him over decades: makeup artists, stunt performers, directors, caterers, and security staff. Even in an age of carefully cultivated social media presences, when many stars hire teams to manage their online image, Keanu remains conspicuously absent from these platforms. No Instagram showcases his daily life. No Twitter account shares his thoughts. This isn't due to technophobia. He simply prefers real-world connections to virtual ones. "I'm really happy I'm not on social media," he told one interviewer. "I think privacy is important and I don't want to give that up." That privacy extends to his romantic life as well. After the tragic loss of Jennifer Syme, Keanu was not publicly linked with anyone for many years. Tabloids occasionally tried to create relationships where none existed, but he neither confirmed nor denied these stories, maintaining a dignified silence around his personal affairs. When he did eventually begin a relationship with artist Alexandra Grant, it happened away from the public eye. The couple had collaborated professionally for years before their relationship evolved, sharing a love of literature and art. Their first public appearance together in 2019 was notable for its normalcy, walking hand in hand on a red carpet, both smiling warmly, both looking comfortable in their own skin. What struck many observers about this relationship was how age-appropriate and genuine it appeared. In an industry where men in their 50s routinely date women in their 20s, Keanu, then 55, chose a partner close to his own age. And in a town where beauty standards are narrowly defined and rigidly enforced, he chose a woman who, while undeniably beautiful, had not altered her appearance to fit Hollywood's youth-obsessed ideals. The public response to their relationship revealed much about how people view Keanu. There was an outpouring of genuine happiness for him, a collective sense that here was a good person who deserved joy after enduring so much sorrow. It was the type of reaction usually reserved for friends or family members, not distant celebrities. This connection that people feel to Keanu transcends typical fan-celebrity relationships. Something about his combination of kindness, authenticity, and quiet melancholy resonates deeply, making many feel they know him even though he has shared relatively little of his inner life with the public. Perhaps it's because, in an era of oversharing and performative vulnerability, Keanu's reserve feels refreshingly real. His sadness is not hidden, but neither is it exploited. It simply exists as part of who he is, alongside his generosity, his work ethic, and his fundamental decency. Or perhaps it's because he embodies qualities increasingly rare in public figures: humility, integrity, and a genuine concern for others that extends beyond photo opportunities or tax write-offs. Whatever the reason, as Keanu entered his third decade of fame, he had achieved something remarkable. He was both an A-list celebrity and a person almost universally regarded with respect and affection. In a cynical age, he had somehow remained uncorrupted by wealth, unchanged by adulation, and unbowed by tragedy. His longtime stunt double summed it up this way: in this business, you meet all types. The ones who have talent but no character, the ones who have neither, and the rare ones who have both. Keanu is that rarest kind. Someone who has reached the top without stepping on anyone to get there, who has all the fame and fortune anyone could want, but hasn't let it turn him into someone his younger self wouldn't recognize. As the 2010s approached, few could have predicted that this quiet motorcycle-riding, poetry-reading actor was about to experience a career renaissance and cultural reappraisal that would cement his unique place in Hollywood history. The man who had always moved to his own rhythm was about to become, improbably, more relevant than ever. The years following the Matrix trilogy were challenging for Keanu professionally. Hollywood can be cruelly dismissive of actors once they've passed what executives consider their prime. For every Tom Cruise who maintains A-list status into middle age, dozens of once bankable stars find themselves relegated to direct-to-video projects or nostalgic cameos. By the early 2010s, industry insiders were beginning to write Keanu off. His films during this period, The Day the Earth Stood Still, 47 Ronin, Street Kings, failed to capture audiences or critics. Trade publications described him as a former star, implying his best days were behind him. One particularly harsh review questioned whether he had ever truly been able to act, or had simply been well cast in roles that required limited range. For anyone else, this career trajectory might have led to bitterness or desperate attempts to recapture former glory. Keanu, however, approached this professional downturn with the same equanimity he'd shown toward success. He continued to choose projects based on personal interest, rather than commercial potential, turning down safer options to work with directors he admired, or on stories he found meaningful. During this period, he also explored other creative outlets. He co-founded a motorcycle company, Arch Motorcycle, designing custom bikes that reflected his lifelong passion for riding. He collaborated with artist Alexandra Grant on a book of poetry, Ode to Happiness, a playfully melancholic work that hinted at his complex emotional landscape. And he made his directorial debut with Man of Tai Chi, a martial arts film that, while not a commercial hit, demonstrated his deep respect for Asian cinema and fighting traditions. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening in the cultural landscape. The internet, with its peculiar ability to elevate and celebrate authenticity, was developing a fascination with Keanu that transcended his acting career. It began with what became known as the Sad Keanu meme, a paparazzi photo of him sitting alone on a park bench eating a sandwich, looking pensive. Something about the image resonated deeply online, inspiring fan art, poetry, and even a cheer-up Keanu day. When asked about the phenomenon, Keanu responded with characteristic good humor. "My friend sent that stuff to me. It was funny." Unlike many celebrities who might have been offended by becoming a meme, he seemed genuinely touched by the concern for his happiness. This was just the beginning. As social media platforms grew, so did the collective affection for Keanu. Every new story about his kindness, giving up his subway seat, helping stranded motorists, respectfully keeping his hands hovering above women's backs in photos rather than touching them, spread virally. Reddit threads dedicated to Keanu being awesome accumulated, thousands of examples of his small kindnesses and unpretentious nature. This groundswell of public goodwill coincided with a script landing on Keanu's desk in 2013. John Wick was an action film about a retired hitman forced back into the underworld after gangsters kill his dog, a final gift from his dead wife. On paper, it seemed like another generic revenge tale, the type of movie aging action stars often make in the twilight of their careers. What set this project apart was Keanu's commitment to it. Now approaching 50, he threw himself into preparation with the intensity of an actor half his age. He trained for months in jiu-jitsu, gun handling, and gun fu, a fighting style that combines martial arts with firearms. By the time filming began, he could execute complex action sequences with a fluid grace that astonished even veteran stunt coordinators. The directors, Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, were former stuntmen who had worked with Keanu on The Matrix. They knew his work ethic and physical capabilities, but even they were impressed by his dedication. "He's not a guy who's ever going to say, 'That's good enough,'" Stahelski noted. "He's always asking, 'How can we make this better?'" When John Wick was released in 2014, expectations were modest. But something about the film, its stylized violence, its world building, its emotional core of grief, resonated with audiences. Critics praised its refreshing approach to action choreography, and viewers responded to the underlying themes of loss and redemption that gave the spectacular fight scenes emotional weight. At its heart was Keanu's performance as the grieving Wick, a man of few words but profound feeling. There was something mesmerizing about watching this character channel his rage and sorrow into brutal efficiency. Perhaps because of Keanu's own experiences with loss, his portrayal had a depth and authenticity that elevated the material beyond typical action fare. The film's success launched a franchise that would grow to include sequels, spin-offs, and even a video game. More importantly for Keanu, it marked a remarkable third act in a career that many had prematurely eulogized. At an age when many actors struggle to find meaningful work, he had become the center of a cultural phenomenon. What made this renaissance particularly sweet was that it happened on Keanu's terms. He hadn't chased trends or reinvented himself to appeal to younger audiences. He had simply continued to approach his craft with integrity and dedication, and somehow, the zeitgeist had swung back around to appreciate exactly what he had to offer. The years following John Wick brought a cascade of projects that showcased different facets of his talent. He returned to comedy with a scene-stealing cameo in the Netflix romantic comedy Always Be My Maybe, poking fun at his own mythic status. He lent his voice to Toy Story 4 as Duke Kaboom, a Canadian stuntman toy with a tragic past. He appeared in the sci-fi film Replicas, exploring themes of grief and loss that had personal resonance. Most surprisingly, he agreed to revisit one of his most beloved roles, returning as Ted Logan in Bill and Ted Face the Music nearly 30 years after the original films. The project had been in development hell for years, but Keanu remained committed to it out of loyalty to the character and his co-star, Alex Winter. When asked why this particular role meant so much to him, he explained simply, "I love the character's optimism and sweetness." This period also saw Keanu venture into the world of video games with Cyberpunk 2077, lending not just his voice and likeness but his motion capture performance to the character Johnny Silverhand. The game's troubled release couldn't diminish the excitement fans felt at seeing him embrace this new medium, bringing his particular intensity to the digital realm. Throughout this career resurgence, what remained constant was Keanu's groundedness. Success the second time around didn't change his essential nature. He still arrived on set without an entourage, still treated crew members with respect, still deflected praise with self-deprecating humor. When GQ magazine declared 2019 the year of Keanu Reeves, he seemed genuinely bewildered by the attention. At the premiere of John Wick Chapter 3, a reporter asked him what it was like to be so universally loved. Keanu paused, visibly uncomfortable with the premise, then replied simply, "That's nice. That's really nice." This reaction spoke volumes about his character. In an industry built on ego and self-promotion, Keanu has always seemed slightly embarrassed by adulation, as if he suspects he doesn't quite deserve it. This humility paradoxically only makes people admire him more. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Keanu's enduring appeal is how it transcends generations. Teenagers who weren't born when The Matrix was released quote his lines and wear t-shirts with his image. Older fans who have followed his career for decades feel vindicated in their long-standing appreciation. He has somehow become both an icon and an anti-icon. Famous for being famous, but also famous for seeming uncomfortable with fame. What explains this rare cross-generational, cross-cultural appeal? Part of it may be the transparency of his emotional life. In an era of carefully constructed celebrity personas, Keanu's grief, his joy, his confusion, and his kindness all feel authentically his own, rather than calculated for effect. He seems in a fundamental way to be exactly who he appears to be. There's also his unique relationship with masculinity. In his roles and his public persona, Keanu embodies traditionally masculine traits like physical prowess and stoicism, but balances them with sensitivity, vulnerability, and a notable lack of aggression off-screen. At a time when conversations about toxic masculinity have entered the mainstream, he offers an alternative model of how to be a man in the world. As he enters his 60s, Keanu's legacy seems secure not just as an actor but as a cultural touchstone, someone who has navigated the treacherous waters of fame with his humanity intact. The boy born in Beirut who grew up without roots has, improbably, become a fixed point in the cultural firmament, a rare figure about whom almost everyone seems to agree. He's one of the good ones. Perhaps the most fitting summary of his unusual place in the public imagination comes from a fan who, when asked to explain Keanu's appeal, said simply, "He's been through so much, achieved so much, and still treats the janitor with the same respect he gives to the studio head." That's rare anywhere, but especially in Hollywood. In a cynical age, Keanu Reeves reminds us that kindness isn't weakness, that fame doesn't have to corrupt, and that it's possible to endure profound loss without losing one's capacity for joy. For a man who has played so many heroes on screen, his most impressive role may be the one he plays in real life, himself, in all his complex, gentle, resilient humanity.